Hey everybody, it's me, Brother Wild Bill, coming to you from inside the most dangerous prison in the Western Hemisphere in the Republic of Panama. I'm the prison's chaplain as well as an inmate. This ain't no cosplay. If you want to pull down the description box, you can find a link to the Wikipedia page about me there that'll give you more information about who and what I am. I was a hitman in the street from 2006 until 2010. When I was arrested, I'm serving 46 years for quintuple homicide. I've been in prison for 13 years. Here I'm the inmate's representative as well as the prison's recognized chaplain. So we're talking about, this is the second episode about the rise and fall of General Manuel Antonio Noriega, a very dear friend of mine. In the fifth episode, the last episode, we'll talk about how he was my friend and how I got to know him. But right now, we're going to talk about his rise, the second episode. If you want to go back and listen to the first episode, you can, and there's going to be this is the second of a 5-episode series about this important thing. Now, there's a couple of things we need to remember, that during this time, the Americans were in control of the Panama Canal, had a huge military presence inside Panama. These are things that are really important. Panama was a very impoverished nation of about 1.5 million in this time period, a very small nation indeed. The actual American military presence was bigger than the entire in Panama was bigger than the actual Panamanian military presence. So we want to talk about a young man named Tony, called Tony, who was named Manuel Antonio Noriega, and they called him Tony for short. The military was a way for Tony Noriega to advance. Tony was a young man who was without a father. His father died early. He had a relatively abusive father who died early. He looked up to his older brother as a father figure. Tony was, unfortunately, he had a lot of acne, and he was very self-conscious about his scarred cheeks. He had two very scarred cheeks. The Panamanians actually would call him pineapple face, which is la cara de piña, which is a very ugly thing to say about poor Tony, but that's what they called him. He was short. He wasn't physically, he didn't stand out physically, and so he had to study hard and work his own way up. He come from a very lowly family, a very poor family, and he entered the Panamanian military as a lieutenant. Now, during that time period, in the 1970s, late 60s and early 70s, Panama's military would control the Panama police force. The Panama police force was actually just an extension of the Panamanian military, and the traffic police, Noriega would be in control of the Chiriquí province's traffic police, like the highway patrol. And he was really, really good at knowing information. So they actually built a secret police, like a Gestapo, sort of, so to speak, around Tony Noriega. He rose to become, in the late 1970s, the head of the secret police of the Republic of Panama, an institution which he actually built from the ground up and designed himself. And Tony was like really, really good as in his position as head of the secret police. He was so good, actually, that he uncovered so many secrets that he used them, like who was screwing who and who was robbing this and who was moving drugs. He would use that information as leverage to his own well-doing. The Panamanian military were very afraid of Tony Noriega, actually. Tony began in the late 1970s attending U.S. training seminars in anti-communism. The United States was so afraid that Cuba, because they were so successful, in resisting the United States, this was during the time of the Soviet Union, that they were afraid that the Latin American nations, which were all left-leaning anyway, would go commie on them. They would all go red. And so they with friendly nations, especially a nation like Panama, where the United States military was based, and Cuba is another nation in which the United States is based in Guantanamo. So they have a peace. The United States has a lease with Cuba for the Guantanamo Bay military base. Well, the United States had a lease with Panama until 1999 for the Panama Canal. So they wanted friendly relations, and they wanted to do everything they could to foster relationships between Panamanian military officials and the United States. And so Noriega began, moonlighting to the United States, and the United States looked at Noriega as someone they could trust. Now, when Omar Torrijos, as we talked about in the first episode, the dictator of Panama during this time period, began looking towards looking to Cuba for help as well as the United States. The United States freaked out, and one of those training seminars when Noriega was there in the United States taking one of the training seminars, one of the military training seminars. They approached Tony Noriega and thought maybe it would be better if he was dictator of Panama. Maybe it would be better if he was in control of the military. That sounded pretty damn good to Tony. And so the United States gave him a sophisticated surface-to-air missile system that was so small it would fit in a briefcase, just a large suitcase. That's a better word, not a briefcase, but in a suitcase. And so he carried it down. And when he knew that Omar Torrijos, this was on the 31st of July in 1981, his people knew that Tony Noriega was fucking the Shah of Iran's wife and frequenting there. And so when they went across in a small airplane to see the Shah of Iran, Omar Torrijos, the dictator of Panama, went over to fuck the Shah of Iran's wife. When he was returning, Tony Noriega set up his people on in the bay there with that SAM system, surface-to-air missile system, and took Torrijos out. When Torrijos died, the plane crashed, and it was never recovered either. The plane crashed, and Torrijos was killed. Noriega did a very intelligent thing. He began to mourn Torrijos, publicly, and set up these public memorial services for Torrijos, and with his extensive system of spies, he knew who was and who wasn't. And so he just killed anybody that was in his way. I'll tell you something about Noriega. Noriega isn't as bloodthirsty as they make him out to be. He killed very few people, actually. Less than the Americans kill, less than the European Union kills. Noriega was actually really good at persuasion. Blackmail, I guess, but persuasion. He wasn't a murderer, really. He didn't go around killing everybody. He invited his enemies together and told them, I will kill you and your families if you don't follow in line, and gave them the actual opportunity. I think that's better than the Americans do, better than most first world nations do. If you want the truth, he gave them the opportunity to follow. And one of the things that happened during that time period is he made an enemy of the Spadafora family, which we're going to talk about in episode number 3. The Spadafora family was a first-generation set of immigrants from Italy. They were children, first-generation children of Italian immigrants. And Dr. Hugo Spadafora would turn out to be an extremely large thorn in Noriega's side during his dictatorship reign. And then we'll find out how Noriega killed Spadafora and how that went south. That was the beginning of the fall of Noriega's reign. Noriega, I want to give an opinion that I think Noriega was an excellent secret policeman, and he was doing really good when he was behind the scenes. It's when he put himself out there as General Noriega, when he rose up to say General Noriega and was the dictator of Panama, then I don't think that he was cut out for that limelight. I think he was a behind-the-scenes guy and was so good at what he did. He was really efficient. But his personality wasn't a personality that was like an extroverted personality. It was a very introverted personality, and he had a lot of skeletons in the closet and a lot of personal demons. And I think that the limelight destroyed Noriega and forced him maybe out of what his comfort zone was being. That was in the shadows. Forced him out of the shadows into the limelight, and it was a terrible thing. He accepted the help of the United States, and the CIA wanted Torrijos dead because they were so afraid that a communist revolution could happen in a country and where they had the lease on the canal, because they were already in Cuba. They already had a communist revolution in a place where they had a very important military base. They didn't want a communist revolution also where the Panama Canal was. So next week, you can listen to these episodes. All 5 of these episodes are out right now because they're all dropping on the same day, on Monday. So if you're listening to this episode, all 5 episodes are out. You can go back and listen to the first episode, or you can go forward and listen to the next 3 episodes if you've been following along. So we're talking about the rise and fall of my dear friend, General Manuel Antonio Noriega, Uncle Tony. He wanted me to call him Uncle Tony. I thought that was funny. And we'll talk about that personal relationship I have with Noriega, friendship, in the very last episode, number 5. If you're enjoying these, make sure that you subscribe, like, These are the real deal. They're coming straight from the horse's mouth. I'm laying on a prison bunk in Panama right now. You can't get more real than this, boys and girls. So, like, subscribe, and comment. If you want to talk to me directly, pull the description box down. There you'll find links to my social media, Facebook, Instagram. There's also a Wikipedia link, as I've already mentioned there, if you want to know more about me. And on top of those things, I wrote a book called Long Live the King, Wild Bill. Go get your ass a copy of that. Every time you buy one, I get $4, and that helps me eat here in hell. So thanks, guys. I love you guys. I appreciate you listening very much. God bless you. I'm Brother Wild Bill, coming to you from inside the most dangerous prison in the Western Hemisphere, where I'm the chaplain of the church in hell.